Mississippi.
But why, if it's such a good business, would you be asking taxpayers to help pay for it without giving them equity in the company? Are you giving taxpayers shares?
No, the investors get the shares, but here's why they would do it.
But why would the taxpayers have to?
Well,
I mean, in other words, if you want to start a business, but why am I, as a taxpayer, forced to pay for your business? I don't get it.
Well, let's forget about data centers. Let's go any manufacturing. Let's say you're going to build an aluminum sheet manufacturing facility. Mm-hmm. You go to the government there and say, look, this is going to huge capex huge capex expenditure. I'm going to hire.
They voted on it in a back room in Utah. 3 representatives. That's all it took. And Tucker Carlson looked Kevin O'Leary dead in the face and asked one question that nobody in the room could cleanly answer. How did you get this passed? 3 men in a room decided what energy gets eaten, what land gets swallowed, and whose taxpayer money gets handed over to a billionaire's vanity project. And the answer Kevin gave? It'll make your stomach drop. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, the man who made his brand out of brutal honesty on Shark Tank, the man who tells struggling entrepreneurs to their face that their dream is dead. That same man is now standing in front of America with his hand out, and the receipts don't lie. Here's what you need to understand before we go any further. Kevin O'Leary is building a data center, not a small one, a massive one. We're talking about a facility that at peak operation will consume roughly as much electricity as the entire city of New York. That is not an exaggeration. That number came out of Tucker's own mouth in their face-to-face interview, and Kevin didn't deny it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, data centers exist everywhere. What's the problem? The problem is what's hiding underneath the deal. The tax breaks, the 3 Utah representatives, the jobs math that doesn't add up, and the energy equation that somebody is hoping you never notice.
Number 2, the energy thing I think is a little bit of a red herring at this point, because the sort of claim, the claim is these data centers are going to they're going to use so much energy, and then they're going to cause local energy bills, to skyrocket. And I think it's very bad, by the way, when that happens. I think if a data center comes in, it should bring its own energy with it, or pay for the energy separately. There is a new federal policy now exactly along those lines that I think everybody's doing in practice, which is to pair. If you do a data center, you bring your own energy. So I think that can be dealt with. And then both of those connect to what I...
Stay with me, because what's coming next is worse than the headline. The interview started civil enough. Tucker asked a straightforward question about tax incentives. Why would taxpayers be forced to subsidize a private business? Kevin's answer was essentially, welcome to America. This is how it's always worked.
2,000 people. I'm going to build a community center. I'm going to pay a lot of tax on the profits in your state when I sell the aluminum. And I'm going to hire all these people who they will also pay tax. And we will build a school because our workers need a school. And. What can you give me to incentivize me versus the state right beside you, which is willing to give me an incentive package?
No, I understand. I understand that you're gaming a system in place. You didn't come up with this, but no, I'm just trying to understand. So the trade typically is jobs, okay? But these projects don't actually.
Well, no, it's also jobs and taxes because you're going
and taxes.
Yeah,
But then you're getting a tax break, so that doesn't really make any sense.
Only on the front.
He compared his data center to an aluminum manufacturing plant. He said governments compete. States offer incentives to attract business. This is a real argument, by the way. Joe Rogan made that same point on his podcast. The system exists. Kevin didn't invent it. But Tucker wasn't letting it go that easy. He pushed harder.
Okay, well, I don't know. Lots of bad things go on for a while. But I think at some point it's worth assessing, like, why are we doing this? So
you are
on the
fair
job
to do that. You're doing it because there's a competition.
Well, I run a couple of businesses, and we're not getting any tax breaks. I think they're every bit as virtuous as data centers, but I'm not availing myself of that, and no one's offered. And I wouldn't take it anyway, because it's not the job of taxpayers to subsidize a private business.
It's a fair comment, but my job is to create a data center, create 2,000 jobs for long-term and 10,000 manufacturing.
And that's when the math started falling apart in real time. Kevin claimed the project would generate 2,000 permanent jobs. 2,000 for a facility multiple times the size of Manhattan, consuming New York City levels of electricity. Tucker did the math out loud. New York City, almost 5 million jobs.
The last one I built.
May I ask, 2,000 jobs, okay, so relative to the physical size of the project, which, as you noted, is multiple times the size of Manhattan, and the power draw at peak, this data center, your projections, will consume about as much energy as New York City does. But New York City provides almost 5 million jobs. And this project, by your own description, would provide about 2,000 jobs. I don't see the trade here.
You definitely got that calculation wrong.
Okay,
By building a data center that trains AI, that provides productivity to the entire nation, we create millions of jobs, high-paying jobs.
So AI is going to create jobs?
Yes.
I thought it was going to eliminate jobs.
Kevin's data center, 2,000. Tucker said he didn't see the trade. Kevin fired back that AI productivity would create millions of jobs across the nation. Tucker said he thought AI was supposed to eliminate jobs. Neither of them blinked.
Net.
Just think about the new technologies we don't even know yet that are going to be...
Should we keep going there?
No. I think we get it.
That was a good cross-section of the debate.
Yeah, I think we get it.
A lot of it was in there.
So, what is your take on that?
I have many takes on that.
Okay, I know. I saw you writing things down, so that's what I'm asking you.
I'm ready to go. So a couple things. So they started out talking about tax breaks for businesses. I think that's a completely legitimate debate topic. I think he's on that one. Tucker's right in the sense of some kinds of businesses get tax breaks, others don't.
Right.
That's a completely fair thing. I could argue both sides of that one. I would say that number one.
And that's the open wound right there. Because this argument is not just about Kevin O'Leary. This is the argument happening right now across America, in boardrooms, in government halls, and on podcasts watched by millions. Can America still build anything? And who actually pays?
I think is the big underlying issue, which they were kind of dancing around, which is what we talked about earlier with the rebuilding of LA, which is, can you build anything in America anymore? Can you? Can you build a factory? Can you build a chip plant? Can you build a power plant? Can you build a refinery? Can you build a pipeline? Can you build housing? And one of the common themes in American life for the last 30 years is the answer to those questions is generally no. You can't do any of those things, right? So take as an example Silicon Valley, right? So all the chips are made in Taiwan. Well, 40 years ago, all the chips were made in California. Why are all the chips made in Taiwan? Because in California, the regulations got set so that you couldn't make chips in California anymore. So now they're all made in Taiwan. And now we have to figure out what to do if China invades Taiwan. Right.
That's really all it is? It's just regulations?
Oh, yeah. All the chip plants used to be in California.
Here's where it gets darker. And here's something Kevin's PR team is quietly hoping stays buried. The data center doesn't just need land and labor. It needs energy. Enormous, relentless, around-the-clock energy. And the most rational power source to pair with a facility that size, the one that Rogan and his guests spent nearly 15 minutes breaking down, is nuclear. Specifically, small modular nuclear reactors. A microreactor planted right next to the data center, powering it independently, taking the burden off the local grid entirely. But here's the dirty secret under the dirty secret. America hasn't approved a new nuclear plant design in 40 years. 40 years!
The administration, around the time you and I were born, created something called Project Independence. And Project Independence was to build 1,000 new civilian nuclear power plants in the U.S. by the year 2000. And the idea was 1,000 nuclear power plants will power the entire United States with totally clean energy. By the way, that's also the electricity you need to be able to cut over to electric vehicles, which could have happened a lot sooner. And then it's called Project Independence because it means the U.S. won't have to be involved in the Middle East anymore because we won't need the oil. Right. And this was a response to the growing energy crisis in the 1970s at the time. How many nuclear power plants were built out of the 1,000? Rounds to zero. They never got built because the Nixon administration also created the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which made it its purpose in life is to stop nuclear power plants from getting built. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission did not approve a new nuclear plant design for 40 years.
The Nixon administration launched Project Independence in the early 1970s, a plan to build 1,000 civilian nuclear power plants by the year 2000. Clean energy, carbon-free, enough to power everything, enough to cut dependence on Middle Eastern oil entirely. How many got built? Rounds to zero. The Nixon administration also created the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which spent the next 4 decades making it its mission to stop nuclear plants from ever getting approved. 3 Mile Island hit, 0 deaths. The science says it clearly.
Out. Complete panic. How many people died from 3 Mile Island melting down?
1?
Zero.
Zero?
Zero deaths. 0 deaths. And the total...
How many people got ill, though?
No, I don't.
Is there residual cancer deaths?
I don't know that there's any evidence of any resulting illness. Because it just melts down. It just stays there. So like if you walk into an abandoned nuclear power plant that's melted down that hasn't been contained, you're going to be in trouble. But like if you're another example is Fukushima. I think that they literally have an argument of like whether it's 0 or 1 people who have been affected by Fukushima in Japan, which was affected. Yeah. Well, this is people have I forget who did it, but somebody went shortly after Fukushima and just made a point. One of the Americans who works in this stuff went over there and he just like went around and started eating everything, all the edible plants and drinking the groundwater. Like these are not, in fact.
Yeah, but the consequences of radiation poisoning aren't instantaneous, right? But
official investigations by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission itself found no detectable health effects on workers or the public. Fukushima in Japan, 1 disputed death at most, and the debate is still open. But the narrative buried both of those facts under a mountain of panic. Green glowing rods, government cover-ups, voodoo technology. The ick factor, as Rogan put it, made it politically impossible to build the very thing that could have solved American energy for a century. So, what happened instead? In Europe, Germany shut down all its nuclear plants, switched to wind and solar. Beautiful, progressive, clean. Except wind doesn't blow 24 hours a day, and the sun doesn't shine at night. So what filled the gaps? Coal. Germany's carbon emissions went up. The environmentalists who killed nuclear power handed the continent a coal dependency in exchange.
We've been shutting them down. And by the way, Germany has been shutting them down.
Germany shut them all down,
yeah,
right?
They've been shutting them down. The result of that, it's actually, there's tons of ironies in this. And so first of all, you don't get the energy. You don't get like the safest form of energy known to man. Like you just simply don't get that.
Most effective and
cleanest and everything else. And least, and by the way, this is the other thing is rank ordering all of this, like rank order any of this against oil and gas, the downstream implications of oil and gas or any other form. Like it's super clear. Like, and by the way, the environmental movement itself is turning and they're actually rediscovering nuclear power and becoming in favor of it.
Right.
Stuart Brand is one of the original environmentalists, wrote a whole book talking about how this whole thing was a huge mistake. So this is starting to happen. But there's all kinds of just amazing kind of downstream things from that. And so one is if you turn off, this is what Europe is doing. If you turn off the reliable sources of energy, then the theory is you're going to cut over to renewables, which is wind and solar. The problem is wind and solar are not 24/7.
Right.
And so this is what Germany has done is you turn off your nuclear power plant. You then are running on wind and solar, which is then erratic, whether the sun is out or whether the wind is blowing. And so then you need your backup generation of power to be able to make up for the gaps. And guess what that is? Coal.
Now America wants to build AI data centers that consume the energy of cities. And nobody has figured out how to power them cleanly without the thing that regulators spent decades burying.
Number 2, if you're going to build a data center, you want it to bring its own energy, right? So the very specific thing you want to do is ideally you'd want to plant a nuclear microreactor right next to it and just let it like completely power itself, right? And just like let it go, and then as a consequence, these issues are getting intertwined, and so what's happened is the Trump administration is both extremely pro building AI and building AI data centers, and they are very pro American energy production, and then those issues are linked because the data centers need energy. And as a consequence, the left has become, as a consequence, increasingly anti-AI and has always been anti-energy and anti-nuclear. And now they're combining that together. And then, of course, Tucker is the latest twist on this, which is you now have a rump I don't even know what to call it, anti-tech, anti-AI, anti-energy movement on the far right. And so
Kevin O'Leary knows this. The Trump administration knows this. And according to Rogan's conversation, a new federal policy is now moving in exactly that direction. If you build a data center, you bring your own energy source. You don't leech off the local grid. You don't spike your neighbor's electricity bills. You bring your own power. That policy is the only rational response. But it also means Kevin's project and every project like it is suddenly tied to the nuclear revival question. And that question is explosive. Because here's the political trap that nobody is talking about openly. The political left has spent decades fighting both fossil fuels and nuclear. They are now increasingly fighting AI and data centers. Those 3 positions are merging into one anti-development wall. And on the other side, the far right, the Tucker Carlson wing, is a different kind of resistance. Anti-tech, anti-AI, suspicious of big capital using government machinery to subsidize corporate power. Rogan called it the horseshoe theory. The Bernie Sanders position on AI and the Tucker Carlson position on AI are bending toward each other.
You've got the horseshoe theory, you've got the horseshoe theory where the Bernie position on AI and the Tucker position on AI are becoming closer and closer and closer. And so anyway, so that's the backdrop to all this. This is why I think it's I think what Kevin is doing is a fantastic idea. I think obviously he should build that thing. Should he get the tax breaks or not? I don't know, whatever. Should he build the thing? 100%.
So the argument about the tax breaks is that states offer tax breaks because they're in competition with other states.
For certain categories of businesses.
Right.
And so this happens, Kevin said it, this happens with manufacturing. If in the rare event that I want to open a manufacturing plant in the U.S.
One side says corporations are robbing the working class. The other side says globalists are replacing American workers with machines. And Kevin O'Leary is standing in the middle of both firing squads. This is the climax. This is the moment the PR machine cracks, because Tucker didn't just ask about tax breaks and job numbers. Tucker asked the question that makes billionaires sweat. You're asking taxpayers to fund a private business. You're getting the shares, they're getting the bill. Why? Kevin said it was competition between states. Kevin said jobs. Kevin said AI will create new industries we can't even imagine yet. And Tucker looked at him and said he thought AI was supposed to eliminate jobs. The room had no clean answer, because there isn't one. Not yet. 3 Utah representatives voted on something that affects millions of people. Kevin O'Leary is building a facility the size of Manhattan. The energy it needs doesn't exist cleanly in America right now. The regulatory system that could unlock that energy has been broken since Nixon.
And what regulations specifically stop them from being able to manufacture
Environmental.
chips? Environmental,
yes. And you have specific issues on environmental impact on things, and then you have these umbrella things with names like NEPA that basically essentially ban everything in much of the country.
What was the negative consequences of them in terms of the environment?
I mean, it's like any of these things. There's always some substance to it. There's always some risk of it's probably something chemical leakage or something like that.
Right.
If the chemicals aren't properly managed, and then there's whatever are the kind of superheated claims that surround it.
Germany tried the renewable only path and ended up burning more coal. And the people arguing loudest against this deal, from the left and from the right, aren't even arguing with each other yet. They're just arguing at Kevin. Here is where it stands right now. The data center project is moving forward. The tax incentive debate is unresolved. The nuclear energy revival is in early federal policy stages, but faces decades of regulatory and cultural resistance. Environmental groups are watching. Labor advocates are watching. And Tucker Carlson is watching. What's missing? The full financial structure of the deal, the actual names on the contracts, whether the 3 Utah representatives disclosed any conflicts of interest, whether Kevin's investors, who get the shares while taxpayers get the bill, include any political donors. Those documents haven't surfaced yet. Maybe they won't. Maybe they already exist in someone's inbox. Kevin O'Leary made a fortune telling regular people their ideas weren't worth funding. Now he's asking regular people to fund his idea. No equity, no shares, just the privilege of saying they helped build the future. So here's the question that belongs in the comments right now. When a billionaire uses your tax money to build a machine that might eliminate your job, is that capitalism working exactly as designed? Or is it something else entirely? Drop your answer below. And if you think this story's over, you are not paying attention. Subscribe to Snap Query's Hub, because the files they don't want opened, we open them.